Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese Perez and I am the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I am recording on Tharawal country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording and to elders both past, present and emerging. So today I'm talking about the range of success for change. And this concept of success is a really interesting one in organizations and interesting in a project landscape, but also in a business as usual landscape. What does success really look like? How is it related to outcomes? How do you measure it to a degree? But also from a change perspective, when we say that this change was successful, what does that mean? And in some ways, I am a bit of the glass is half empty with an intention to learn. And so it doesn't matter what change I have implemented, I have always thought, how could I improve this next time? And a lot of others reflect to me that, Therese, this is a really great change. This is really successful. I think you should really pat yourself on the back in relation to it. And yes, every now and then there's awards and things that happen as a result of the work that you do. But I'm a constant learner. I'm a continuous learner. And sometimes, yes, can that play out as a bit of a critic about what I do? Yes. It's all, though, with the intent of doing things better. So let's go through the success areas. And I talk about change from a perspective of, yes, you can measure things. You're always learning. Degrees of success in some of the key areas is important to acknowledge. Now, in a program environment, the project manager often sees success as hitting timelines within budget. As long as those timelines are hit, as long as the budget is within the contingency budget, then for them it's a success. From a change perspective, because we're focused on adoption, and to be honest, the harder end of the spectrum, really, because it has the human variable into it. It's more of a game of degrees of success. How engaged were your leaders? How active was the sponsorship? A degree of success. Next time, what would you do to improve that? Something to consider. Thinking about the capability aspects, if you had been required. So attendance to training, but confidence in the training. From a change perspective around adoption design, and I'm going to caveat this with change managers are not there to facilitate design. However, at times in smaller organizations, you are going to get involved in that as a change practitioner, because what you want to see, and especially if there's a tech solution, is the usability of that tech solution, whether it's intuitive, whether it is really foreign and you're having to put really detailed training together, will in turn have an effect on the degree of success and adoption and the time that it might take for people to adopt the change because of that. And that's really important from a change practitioner. And I've always been a bit more business oriented as a change practitioner. So for me, I've always happily gone into the design sessions and really helped advocate for whether it be the end user of technology, whether it be the customer, and try and initiate a customer forum or a customer representation, or at least frontline representation into those discussions, because they work with the customer every day, so they know them every day. So part of the importance of advocacy in the change space is for customer, for client, whatever the terminology may be that you use, but also in relation to the staff or team members who might be impacted. You want to advocate for that because they're going to give you really valuable feedback, because if the design isn't right, then it doesn't matter how much training you do, it wouldn't matter how much communication, how much leadership or reinforcement, poor design will impact adoption. And that's becoming more and more apparent. It's what I talk about in the Change Diamond of Effectiveness, that when it comes to quality and the different aspects, you're actually looking at 4 of the areas in that diamond, and design and the CX aspect is really critical in that. And I think there's a lot more evolution in that thinking as people have an evolution that happens in this discipline now, which is really relevant. So important that that design element, what was the degree of success in design? And you might know that after you've rolled it out and after you've rolled the change out around the process or whatever it may be, because you will get feedback from frontline around this is hard or this is easy, I can see how this would benefit me. They're the type of indicators that you would get post go live and feedback that's going to tell you the degree of success specifically around design, not necessarily change approach. So considering those different areas, leadership, design, capability, activities, communication and messaging, the consistency, the ease, the understanding when it comes to communication. If you've got a technical change rolled out and you haven't simplified that, then, and you haven't gone through that translation for people to adopt it, if it's an all of org change and you haven't considered the cultural link to that so that people can understand the change and understand the why, once again, degrees of success with that. The risk and issues with change, the feedback associated with change, with the feedback channels robust enough, were they once again accessible, then that is really important as well. All of these different parameters, which are the core support mechanisms for change and contributors to adoption, measure those. Consider the spider graph that can happen around strengths and weaknesses in your change approach and how it worked to be able to assess those areas. And you assess them via feedback, from 360-degree feedback, so from team members around leadership. Did they feel like their leader was informed? Did the leaders feel like they were supported? Were they provided with enough information? Those type of measures are going to give you that strength indicator around those key levers for change. And the other key thing, of course, around the change itself is resourcing support. Was there enough support available to even deliver the level of change that you needed? Or was it something that was overreached? So something where potentially, and even yourself, if you're the change practitioner, you might have been overextended, and that is a contributing factor. And resource is just one aspect of overall buy-in. So whether there was economic constraints or whether leaders weren't willing to free up their people to work on the change, or the champion network, there were certain areas maybe that did not provide champions or champion nominees all the time and they weren't engaged. So these are the indicators of success. So success, yes, you will have adoption rates. You're going to have issues that arose, how well they were triaged, how well they were handled, but consider it as a spider map in relation to the strengths within your change framework. You can jump onto myvirtualchangemanager.com. This podcast episode, there will be an example of these levers in particular and what that spider map might look like for a particular change, just so that you get the visual of that, which might help around, and something you might want to utilize where you put in your own additional indicators. Make sure that, though it's not the same as your change readiness, that's very different, but the change readiness measures that you might do prior to the change, those indicators might contribute to this, as well as this is what it looked like pre-change and this is what it looked like post-change. And you might see some very interesting data in relation to that. Knowing, of course, that these changes and people's reception of the changes and how they receive it will always have a bit of bias, and you might see that variation across departments if you're working on an enterprise-wide change. I'm a real data nerd in relation to this stuff because it can really show some key indicators around areas going forward that you might want to focus on or not. I'm very, very keen on measuring when it comes to change, so that you can also provide that to the executive. And when you apply and provide that type of data and debrief to the executive teams, you'll be amazed at how it can initiate conversation where they may never have seen anything like that before. And so they might be requesting it of their other projects or programs, which is a really good thing, and how that builds over time, and how there might be changes in certain areas of the organisation. For example, if they have staff turnover or if there's a restructure. And if you've got that spider map of success that you're measuring when it comes to change, you might see how that changes a lot based on the maturity of the organisation. So a few things to consider. Could rant about it all day because I do like the data element. Measure, get that feedback, be able to analyse it, gather the themes, and be able to then see how you have achieved a degree of success in your change and what you can do to strengthen your change approach next time, because that should be the goal, is to learn. Anyway, I hope this has provided you with some food for thought. I hope you have enjoyed the episode, and definitely come to myvirtualchangemanager.com. We've got some courses spinning up, so worth you jumping on, register for our newsletter so that you can keep across the latest and greatest, which are going to be happening. Our courses are a little bit different when it comes to change because we like to add some coaching in. We, of course, provide you with tools and templates at all times, but we want to also bring into the conversation about how you're showing up in relation to the change, and then also give you some coaching post the lessons so that you can ask your questions, you can get some feedback, and start to join the community that we're forming with My Virtual Change Manager, because we want to change this conversation in organizations, and we want to line change up with a sense of purpose and a real sense of inclusion and belonging, because that's what we're all about. If that's what you're all about, then come and join the conversation with us. As I said, sign up for our newsletter and stay across what we're doing, because change matters, because your people matter. Have a great day.